Hi, and welcome back. You are listening to the Perio Patient Podcast, a podcast primarily for my patients, but also for anyone else who cares to listen. My name is Dr. Ben Young, and I am a periodontist in private practice working in the beautiful city of San Antonio in the great state of Texas. You're listening to episode 108, entitled A New Mouthwash Consideration. Essentially, in today's podcast, I'd like to take you with me as I analyze a chemical compound new to me and as I consider ways I might incorporate it into my patient treatment protocols. You will listen to me modifying a procedure protocol almost in real time and what often goes into making such a change. And let me add, this isn't unique to me. It happens to healthcare providers all the time. We come across literature, do research, and then consider treatment options. Is whatever it is worth incorporating into practice, or is it just another marketing ploy, of which there are many? Just the other day, I came across an article by Dr. Robert Malone on his Substack discussing hypochlorous acid, not hydrochloric acid, abbreviated HCl, which is a strong, colorless, highly corrosive chemical compound, but hypochlorous acid, or HOCl. I knew hydrochloric acid from back in my high school and college chemistry days, but until now I recently had not studied or remembered HOCl, or hypochlorous acid, not enough to make it memorable at least. Dr. Malone described it as a kind of trusted molecule already used by the immune system, and suggested that it could improve patient care when used as an antiseptic. Now, by definition, an antiseptic is a substance that kills or inhibits microorganisms on living tissues to prevent infection. Here are the names of 5 such chemicals: chlorhexidine, povidone iodine, hydrogen peroxide, ethanol, and isopropyl alcohol. Hypochlorous acid is apparently one of these. So now, let me walk you through what hypochlorous acid actually is, what the science says rather than the marketing, whether it can replace chlorhexidine or other mouthwashes in the short term after surgery or even in long-term daily use, and finally the big question of whether it can reduce our reliance on antibiotics. This episode will be shared with both clinicians and patients across both my podcasts, the Perio Hygienist Podcast, and this one here, the Perio Patient Podcast. So expect some fancy terminology along with, I hope, reasonable explanations that will allow most everyone interested to follow along. If you have specific questions, drop me a line. But again, I'll try to keep this grounded and understandable. Finally, at the end of my written script, I will leave some references to literature for those who wish to explore this topic further. I believe all my podcast scripts can be found on my website, dryoungperiodontics.com. Warning, you may have to dig for a few of them. And again, if you want a script and you can't find it, drop me a line. Let's start with a description of hypochlorous acid, or HOCl. First, it is not new, and it was not invented in a laboratory. It is something produced by certain cells in our bodies continually. When neutrophils, which are one of several types of white blood cells circulating in the bloodstream, encounter a microorganism, they generate hypochlorous acid through the myeloperoxidase pathway. In simple terms, this process converts hydrogen peroxide and chloride ions into a very reactive antimicrobial substance. Put even more simply, your immune system already uses HOCl as a chemical weapon. This turns out to be well supported in the scientific literature. Looking more closely, hypochlorous acid is extremely reactive, very short-lived, and highly dose-dependent in its effects. At low levels, meaning at the cellular level of production, it can signal and modulate inflammation. At higher levels, however, it can damage host tissues, including proteins, lipids, and even DNA. Because of this, HOCl is not inherently safe in all situations. Its effects depend entirely on concentration, formulation, and context. Now let's bring this discussion into dentistry. Dentistry routinely deals with open surgical wounds, biofilm-heavy environments, and the constant tension between antimicrobial control and tissue healing. When I refer to biofilm, I'm talking about what dentistry has traditionally described to patients as plaque. Both terms describe early bacterial colonies that adhere to hard surfaces and rapidly reproduce into thick, complex communities containing numerous organisms, including pathogens responsible for tooth decay and periodontal disease. While controlling bacteria is essential, we also want to avoid damaging healthy tissues, as doing so can delay wound healing. Traditionally, we have relied heavily on chlorhexidine, antibiotics, and mechanical debridement. Chlorhexidine is essentially an antimicrobial soap, marketed as HIPAA in hospitals, used for surgical scrubbing, and in dentistry it is formulated as a mouthwash with flavoring agents to mask its bitter taste without reducing its antimicrobial effectiveness against bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Two brands of chlorhexidine are Paradex and PerioGuard. Antibiotics are used both systemically and locally. When used locally, they are usually delivered in powder or paste forms. In spite of all of this, antiseptics versus antibiotics, local versus systemic applications, it's mechanical debridement that remains a cornerstone of biofilm management. This means none of this replaces flossing and brushing gently and frequently. These are mantras of mine and are repeated over and over in previous podcasts over the years. So go back and listen to them if you haven't already or recently. However, chlorhexidine comes with well-known downsides, including staining, taste alteration. You can't taste salt as well. Thus, people oversalt their food, and that can affect those with hypertension. It increases calculus formation and cytotoxic effects on the very cells responsible for healing. The reason it has these problems is due to its ability to stick to the soft tissues of the mouth and release over 12 hours following a single dose. We call this property substantivity. HOCl, hypochlorous acid, and other mouthwashes do not have substantivity the same way chlorhexidine does. But then again, HOCl, unlike chlorhexidine, does not injure or irritate new tissue as it is healing following surgical procedures. And this is the reason I no longer prescribe chlorhexidine following surgical procedures. It interferes with wound healing and also causes the staining, calculus formation, and the rest. During early wound healing, the developing soft tissue cells are called fibroblasts, and the bone-forming cells are called osteoblasts. Both are vulnerable to damage from non-selective, irritating antiseptics, especially when they are in low, meaning acidic, or high, meaning basic, pH ranges. Because of these drawbacks, the idea of an alternative that is antimicrobial, better tolerated, and potentially supportive of healing is very appealing. Regarding HOCl, across multiple studies and reviews, it has consistently demonstrated broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity against bacteria, fungi, and some viruses. In fact, it gained wider attention during the COVID-19 pandemic when it was shown to inactivate SARS-CoV-2 virus in about 30 seconds. It also has rapid kill times and has proven useful in wound irrigation and surface decontamination. Several studies suggest that HOCl can reduce bacterial burden in wounds, improve certain healing metrics, and exert potential anti-inflammatory effects, which clinically translate to reduced redness, swelling, and pain. At least one oral health study has shown that an HOCl mouthwash can reduce salivary bacterial counts in patients with periodontal disease. While not the focus of this podcast dealing primarily with mouthwashes, I'm also looking at HOCl surface disinfectants for the home as well as dental office to replace those that risk eye irritation and skin irritation. HOCl can be sprayed directly on foods to kill microorganisms, so it's used in restaurants. And this is because it doesn't cause a risk of sickness or poisoning to humans. No study has ever found that to be a problem. Now back to dentistry. In wound care models, low concentration HOCl solutions sometimes underperform against established biofilms. Again, this aligns with what we already know, that mechanical disruption is the most effective way to manage established biofilms. In other words, rinsing with HOCl as a substitute for going to the dentist to correct bleeding gums, for example, is a very bad idea. Brushing and flossing remain far more effective than any mouthwash, and no antiseptic is intended to replace those fundamentals. And for those who have problems going on in their mouths, brushing and flossing isn't enough either. First, disease needs to be treated by professionals, and then daily home care will help manage health, still assuming that there is a reasonable frequency of preventive procedures being performed in a dental office. Now we arrive at the big question that Dr. Malone emphasizes strongly. Can HOCl reduce the need for antibiotics? The honest answer is possibly, but only in specific contexts. Modern medicine is increasingly focused on antimicrobial stewardship, reducing unnecessary antibiotic use, and controlling bioburden early with topical antiseptics. HOCl fits within this framework because it can reduce surface bacterial load and may help prevent infections from progressing. In theory, better local control could reduce the need for systemic antibiotics. However, there is currently no evidence that HOCl can replace antibiotics in infected surgical cases, prevent all postoperative infections, or eliminate the need for prophylaxis in higher risk patients. In dentistry, antibiotics are often required for cases involving systemic symptoms, the spreading of infections, or immunocompromised patients, and HOCl does not address these scenarios. Practically speaking, HOCl may help reduce antibiotic overprescription, decrease reliance on topical antibiotics, and lower early-stage infection risk, but it does not replace systemic antibiotics when they are truly indicated. Does hypochlorous acid promote healing? Some studies suggest that HOCl may improve fibroblast migration, enhance epithelial healing, and reduce inflammatory burden. At the same time, these benefits are highly dependent on dose and formulation. There is an inherent paradox with HOCl because the same molecule that kills bacteria can also damage host tissue at higher concentrations. This makes controlled, low concentration, stabilized formulations essential, and it also explains why not all products perform equally. So where does this leave us? Stripping away both hype and skepticism, hypochlorous acid is biologically relevant, broadly antimicrobial, generally well tolerated, and useful in wound care. At the same time, it is not a universal replacement for systemic antibiotics, even though it might reduce the need to prescribe them prophylactically for healthy patients. From a practical standpoint in dentistry, clinicians might consider HOCl for post-extraction rinses, implant surgery maintenance, and soft tissue healing support following LANAP or other periodontal surgical procedures. Hypochlorous acid is certainly not a magic bullet, but it appears to be a useful tool in a broader shift toward better wound care, reduced antibiotic overuse, and more biologically aligned treatments. So now, what do I plan to do in my practice with regards to HOCl? I've already purchased a case of this mouthwash, and once I get it, I will start pre-rinsing surgical and LANAP patients with it before procedures. They will also go home with a large bottle of mouthwash for post-operative rinsing. I stopped using Paradex as a mouthwash a few years back, so that didn't enter into my considerations here. I still have further research to do in the area of surface disinfectants, finding the right formulation. Finally, there are other applications for this material when it comes to skin and eye care. It has been used by ophthalmologists and dermatologists for years. That's it. If you found this helpful, consider sharing it with a friend, family member, colleague, fellow dental hygienist, fellow dental student, anyone else who cares and is curious about innovations in modern surgical care. This concludes this episode of the Perio Patient Podcast. I'm still Dr. Ben Young. Thanks for listening.